Then nothing seems to change.
At street level.
Same old thing every day.
That's it, that's it, that's it.
Just played and replayed in different ways.
Oi.
Right, part 2. So welcome back. We've got our perspective drawing done now. So if you remember, we started from the vanishing point, the centre dot. We brought all of our lines out. If you look at the previous video, you can see how to do this. Really simple. We've got our windows and our door and our street. So now we're going to add a bit of colour. Okay, so I've mixed them up ready. What I want to do is try to make it so it's quite blocky. Do you know what I mean? Then I'm going to sketch over the top. So I'm just going to paint this. I haven't planned it. I've just got the stuff ready and we're going to go for it. So I'm going to start with maybe making the houses quite yellow. Now, as I say, I want it to be quite blocky. Let's just make sure those colours are coming out. Yeah, that's okay. I want it to be quite blocky. Now, I don't use, with this sort of thing, okay, it's up to you what sort of paint you want to use. Right, but it's quite hard to get hold of stuff at the minute. So, I'm just using normal acrylic paint with a bit of water in there. And the brush that I'm using is one of my studio brushes. So it's just a flat tipped. I like the square flat brushes because I can get quite a good edge. Now at the minute, as I say, get that. Obviously you don't have to copy, but get this filled in, right? Now what I'm going to do is, because we've got windows there, I'll highlight those later on. Okay, so now don't forget, this is going to be a painting, right? And when I paint, I'm quite loose. But because I've got quite a structured drawing to begin with, I could probably make it quite detailed at a later stage once we get all these colours in. So don't worry about going over the lines a little bit. Okay, now at the end I'm going to make a bit of a change to my paint, but at the minute I just want to fill these bits in. So you see how I've gone over there? Don't even worry about it, okay? Everyone, when they paint or draw, needs to find what's called their style. And the only way you find your style is by simply getting on with it, right? Sometimes you'll make mistakes, which to other people seem like mistakes, but they can lead to you finding a whole new approach to how you make your art. So don't ever be scared to just get on with it. Okay, so this isn't school. This is an art class. And in the art world, you can pretty much do whatever you want. As long as you like what you're making, then go for it, okay? Just a bit there to finish off. So now you see, already, that little bit of colour, or a little bit of yellow, is adding a bit of perspective. Let's not forget this little house. Now, because that's so small at the end, it's quite hard to get in, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to finish off. What I'm going to do is, I want to put some yellow just from that point coming out from the road. Okay, now I'm trying not to go over those white bits, but if I do, it's not the end of the world. And I want to keep the road quite white, but I want to get some yellow in between there, because what that's going to do is really bring out those centerpieces. Okay, so as I say, keep adding your colour, go for it. Now you don't have to do what I'm doing. You can do another perspective drawing, different angle, different way of looking at things. You can paint it completely different colours, make it colourful as you can. Now I'm going to add a tiny bit of red in this. Okay, so I'm doing it in the corner there, look, I'm not mixing it all. Okay, now that's giving me a bit of orangey. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to paint my roofs in that colour. Okay, so remember, these are the roofs. Remember how we did that? The lines came in from the top straight down to the centre point. So now if I add that, it's not going to be massively different, but I don't want it massively different at the minute because I want to use the same colour palette throughout. Okay, so that's quite nice. There's a little mistake, look, where the paint hasn't mixed right. Do you know what? I like it, so I'm going to keep it. I'm not that bothered about it making its own colour mix. You see those bits, they're actually quite nice. Okay, so a little bit darker at the end. Now I'm going to add a tiny bit more red to this on my mix, right? So look, you can see the stages of different colour. And at the end, I'm going to put a little bit of darker, just blending the top, okay? And again, on this side. Now, as I say, you don't have to do what I'm doing. So look at that, that's actually a real sort of loose paint flow. Now, got my red mixed up already, so I'm going to do my front doors red because that is a lovely contrast against the yellow. Now, contrast is an important word to an artist because a contrast gives impact. See, look, I've gone over there, whatever, doesn't matter. Now that brush is too big for that, so I'm going to leave that. Okay, so already it's looking a bit like Suburbia. Everything exactly the same. So this is all the colour added, right, on our red sort of scale, red and yellow. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to leave that paint there, and I'm going to get my next colour, which I'm going to do, let me get a nice big brush. Okay, so again, I'm using a flat square brush. On the side, look, do you see it? Nice and thin. The front is nice and square, okay? Now these are the brushes that I use all the time, so they're a bit battered, but it doesn't matter, I'm only painting with them. So, I'm going to do the sky in a nice blue. Now if you look at a sky, usually this isn't, well, I say usually, but it all depends on the time of day and where you are and everything. So sometimes the sky along the top is lighter to the sky furthest away, if you see what I mean. So if you look right up above you, that's most likely sometimes gonna be the bluest part, right? Now what I'm going to do is add some blue to my white here, okay? I'm going to get a little mix going because I want to, as we get down, I'm going to blend that, look. As we get into the bottom, bit more white for the bottom, look. I want the blue to blend down, okay? So that's going to add some distance without trying too hard. All right, so those marks, if we use our paint nice and quick, so this again is acrylic, so it does dry pretty quick, so you've got to work fast. If you're using watercolour, it would dry super quick. If you were using oil, you could leave it 3 days and come back to it. But I do like a bit of acrylic paint. So I'm just going to carry on blending until I've got enough paint to make a decent sort of finish, okay? So that bit at the bottom, you see this lump? A bit more white to get it flowing. Now, if I brush across like this, see how that bit of red's gone in there? I don't mind. I don't mind that at all. Okay. So that gives you an idea of how you can add some depth. Now, do you see what I mean about the dark blue along the top? That's quite nice actually, I quite like that. I might put a little bit more white just down here to really bring it out. Again, contrast, contrast, contrast. Dead important. If you want something to stand out, do that. So, I think what I might do with that as well is do the windows with a mix that's a little bit darker or a different sort of shade to the sky. So if I put that in, all right, now again, I'm not that bothered if it isn't totally solid because it's a painting, yeah? Do you see? Right, so we've got our windows in. Now we're starting to make it look like it's something different because we've put the colour in. It's gone from being a quick sort of perspective sketch to now being more of a painting, okay? So I can change the way I'm painting. Those two bits at the end. Let's get some colour in there. Okay, so there you go. So again, everything's going further away. Now, I suppose what I could do, I'm going to do the pavement next. So let me swap my colour. Now for this, I've got some black and white, okay? So what I'm going to do is put a tiny bit of black into the white and mix it up, because I don't want it to go too dark. So the way to do it is to add the dark to the light. Don't add the white to the black, because you'll have to put a pint of white in there to change that black, okay? So what I'm going to do with this one, I want to paint my floor a bit darker, okay? So I haven't mixed it fully, look, you can see the run in there. So what I'm going to do is bring that sweep down, okay? So now you can see how those lines that we did earlier form a guideline for what you're doing. Now I quite like the way that paint's going on, look. That's a couple of things there. It's because the paint isn't mixed properly, okay, and it's because I'm using a battered brush. But I like battered brushes because they tend to give you an effect without you having to work too hard, okay? So all artists have their favourite things. All artists have their favourite brushes, their favourite canvases, their favourite paint, acrylic, oil, watercolour, whatever. All artists have that, and you have to find that thing for yourself. So what I'm going to do is put a bit of black on the brush, and I'm going to sweep it inwards, okay? Now look at what that does. All of a sudden, that's added more depth again, okay? Same this side. You see how it's brushing itself off, like that? Now that's added quite a bit of detail there. Quite simply as well, nothing to it. Okay, so I'm going to do the little step. Actually, let's swap brush. For that, I need a really little brush. So for this, I've used a little detail brush, okay? I don't often use this sort of thing. But I'm going to get a bit of white, a bit of black, because I just want to put in this front section, but I don't want it to be too dark, but darker than the other bit. Because that is basically a sort of drop shadow for the pavement. Do you see? Like so, okay. Now that's quite nice. See where the paint ran out of the brush? Again, because the paint dries as I'm sweeping up, look, you get that nice effect. And if you can measure that just right on your brush, that will actually paint itself. Now don't beat yourself up. Okay, so now it's at that sort of finished stage. Okay, I know it's only basic, but that's what we want to do at this point. All right, so now we can start adding bits of detail with the pen. Still a little bit wet, but you could, if you want, you know, really go for it. You could put in window frames. Now remember, because we've got a perspective drawing, okay, you could use your ruler again, but you don't have to. You can always just sketch and do it. Now, don't forget, this is just a sort of quick demonstration, right? So it's just basically to show you the stages you need to do to start your own paintings and to start developing a style and to start thinking about, you know, where you're going to go with your art. But you've got to learn the basics first, okay? So I'm just going to quickly sketch this, okay? I'm not spending too long because we don't need to on this, okay? So already we're looking at stuff developing, right? How far you go with it is up to you. You know, you could put a little chimney on each one for that extra bit of detail. Okay, simple as that. You can add a bit of smoke with a white pen perhaps, but I haven't got a white pen handy. Yeah, then you can add your detail for the front door. Quite simple, look. Remember, nice and sketchy, okay? Okay, So you want to keep adding those details until you're happy with it. You can bring details like this. Now what this does, it breaks up what you've done with your pen. So you can actually hide the fact that you've done this with a ruler and a perspective drawing. Do you see what I mean? You see how now that is changing everything, look. Right, all of a sudden we've gone from a perfectly drawn piece of art to something completely different. Yeah? So you have to play with it. You've got to decide what you do, but hopefully that gives you an idea of where to start with a perspective painting. See you next time, dudes.
Same old thing every day.
That's it, that's it, that's it.
Just played and replayed in different ways.
Oi, oi, heavy, heavy. Lock the door on your way out.